We're continuing the Megaman Zero project, and I have a few things I'm hyped to show you. But before we get started, if you've been following my channel for a while, then you know that one of the things that I struggle with is properly organizing my ideas, aka documentation. Well, thanks to this video sponsor Milanote, that's no longer a problem. Milanote is a digital tool for organizing your creative projects. With Milanote, you can organize tasks, add notes, links to references or inspirations, and much more all in one place. There are over 100 tools and templates for every type of creative project to help you organize your ideas. Graphic design, animation, storyboarding, game design, podcasting, product management, you name it. Working with the team? No problem. With Milanote, you can share your ideas and collaborate with others from your computer or the mobile app in case you're on the move and have a sudden spark of inspiration. For me personally, I'm a visual person, so I really appreciate the visual aspect of Milanote. Everything can be organized simply by dragging and dropping, and you can even write notes directly onto the board canvas. This tool has been extremely helpful with this project because it allows me to have all of my ideas organized in one place, and most importantly, helps keep track of scope, which is crucial in game design. I have flowcharts for some of the game mechanics such as vaulting and wall climbing, and the scripts for these devlogs, which can even be edited directly on the board. Milanote is free with no time limit, and you can sign up using the link in the description to start your next creative project. And if you enjoy using Milanote, let me know down below in the comments. Alright, so as I said before, there are quite a few changes and additions to Zero. This phase of the project primarily focuses on Zero's combat abilities, as well as tweaking his movement mechanics a bit. There's a bit to cover, so let's get to it. Let's start with the changes first. Zero's air dash has been reworked, since he normally can't do those, but because this is more of a reimagining than a remake at this point, it'll be added back in a way that I feel makes more sense. Now for the particles. The particle effects on Zero's special attacks has been reduced a bit, making him a little easier to see. A lot of it was mainly from particle systems attached to the saber. Kuenzan was reduced the most, and I think it looks a bit better now. Raijin Geki has also been reworked, as well as some changes to the effects. Zero no longer lunges forward, but instead creates a piercing lightning blade, kind of more like OG Zero's version. This change, unfortunately, removes Zero's ability to chase his opponents in the air during combos, but I got something for that. Lastly, I moved Zero's holster position for his saber to his hip, and I added an effect that moves the saber from the holster to his hand whenever he uses it. This was inspired by how Noctis swapped weapons in Final Fantasy 15, and I made use of the Dash Clone shader to get the blue glow, and added a particle effect around the blade whenever it vanishes or appears. Zero has a new special attack called Hayate, also called W Shredder. This attack creates a clone of Zero that flies forward and performs another one of Zero's attacks from prior games, and that's Shippuga, a dashing slash attack. This effect uses the same shader as the Dash clones. I just changed the color of the purple to match the look from Mega Man X4. When locked onto an enemy, the attack flies directly towards them. Otherwise, it'll just fly in the direction that Zero's facing. I'm also considering adding Guard Shield, which is a defensive ability that creates a barrier around Zero. In the Mega Man Zero games, Zero has access to the Saber, Buster, Recoil Rod, the Triple Rod, the Boomerang Shield, and the Z-Knuckle. I wanted to work some of these into the project, but in a way that I felt fit more into this project's style of play. We already have the Buster. We have its basic functionality implemented with the over-the-shoulder shooting mechanic, the charge shot, and the special attack. The Buster can now be used mid-combo with the Saber, but before we get into that, I replaced the model of the Buster with one from Mega Man X-Dive, which was originally Omega's Buster, as it had a different color, but a simple texture update fixes that. Now back to the combo. In order to start the Buster attacks within a combo string, you have to first perform a Saber attack. The reason is because pressing the sub weapon button normally will trigger shooting mode. If the sub weapon button is pressed during a Saber attack, holy shit, he's packing heat! Zero will perform a Buster attack, and continuing to press the sub weapon button will chain more Buster attacks. Now to give Zero a little bit more sauce, he can almost seamlessly swap between the Saber and the Buster during the combo string. And his Buster attacks can be cancelled into his EX moves. When not in use, the Buster will teleport into the left hip holster using the same effect that the Saber does. And before anyone says it, I know that the barrel of Zero's Buster is actually Zero's Saber, but I think he looks cooler dual wielding. Next up is the Boomerang Shield. In the official games, the shield is actually the Saber being spawned very rapidly, but I decided to make it his own thing. And its functionality was inspired by how the katana's guard works in PSO2. I started with the shield that I grabbed from the asset store and changed the texture to make it white. It's more of a placeholder until I can find something better. As for the blade, I used a buzzsaw blade asset also from the asset store and gave it the same material that the Saber uses. and from there I just created a function to make it spin. Now for functionality, the Boomerang Shield is a defensive weapon. Pressing the sub weapon button will initiate a guard animation, which I decided just to make it omnidirectional. If timed right, Zero will perform a block, which is signaled by the white circle there. And if you press the saber attack button, he'll counterattack with 2 quick slashes, just like the katana from PSO2. Those 2 slashes can be followed up with an EX move. Also, Zero is completely invulnerable during the counterattack. If you double tap the sub weapon button, Zero will throw the shield instead, and it'll circle around outwardly and follow him for a moment before returning to him. And during this time, Zero cannot guard. Zero doesn't have any melee attacks with the shield during the saber combo string. Instead, he's able to cancel out of any normal attack directly into a guard. Now for the Recoil Rod. Out of all the sub weapons, this is the one that I was really looking forward to adding. I decided to make this one the exact opposite of the shield and prioritize offense. For the blade, I just made a copy of the saber's blade model and edited it in Blender to get the right shape. And from there, once again, I just used the saber's blade material, and the hilts are just resized versions of the saber's hilt. Now for the combat, the Recoil Rod offers lower damage but hits rapidly, and the last hit of the ground combo string sets up an air combo. And in the air, there's an extra attack at the end of the Recoil Rod's combo string that's based on its charged attack from the original games, which sends the enemy flying back towards the ground. Just like the Buster, the Recoil Rod can be used mid-combo with the saber simply by alternating which button is pressed, and to be honest, the Recoil Rod is kind of busted. At this point, I figured it'd be good to lower the opacity on the blade trail and the slash effect when swinging to make it easier to see the weapons. He can use them to gain a burst of speed in the air by pressing the dash button. If he's not locked onto an enemy, then it'll work as a normal dash. But if he is locked onto an enemy, no directional input is needed. You just simply press the dash button and he'll fly directly towards the enemy, allowing for follow-up attacks. Next is the Triple Rod. In the original game, this weapon was primarily used to poke enemies in different directions. I decided to make the weapon more of a crowd control option for Zero. Instead of functioning like a spear, it functions more like a halberd. One is more of a piercing weapon and the other is more of a slashing weapon. It swings wide and hits harder than the other weapons, but the trade-off is that it's a little slower. It's pretty straightforward. The other 2 sub weapons, the Chain Rod and the Z-Knuckle, are still on the drawing board as I'm trying to figure out a way to handle those 2, so I haven't forgotten about them. After setting up the sub weapons, I gave Zero some new animations that allowed him to display them when not attacking. Basically, Zero will keep the last weapon he attacked with out, with the exception of the Buster and the shield. This doesn't do anything functionally, but I do think it's a nice detail to add. Speaking of a nice detail to add, in the original games, whenever Zero defeated an enemy with the saber, it would be satisfyingly sliced in half before exploding. And since we already have slicing implemented with blade mode, this one was pretty much easy. Essentially, the way it works is that during Zero's attack animations, there's a particle effect of a slash that plays in front of Zero. The parent object of this slash is rotated during each attack animation, and if the attack lands, that rotation is passed on to the enemy, which tells the enemy what direction they're getting slashed from. On the enemy, there's a reference object that rotates to match the direction of the slash. If that attack takes the remainder of the enemy's health, there's a function that mimics the blade mode slash function, and it performs a slice on the enemy's mesh using that easy slice asset I mentioned in the last video, which uses that reference object to cut the enemy's mesh. Finally, I added a special slash particle effect to play when the enemy is being sliced, as well as an explosion to play when the enemy despawns. Also, only certain attacks can trigger the slicing effect, so specifically slashing attacks, and this includes some of the special attacks. So for example, Hyoretsuzan and Raijingeki both cannot slice the enemy, but Ryujin and Kuenzan both can. The Boomerang Shield can when thrown, as well as the Recoil Rod and the Triple Rod.
my head gone, bruh.
At this point, I wanted to get started on updating the UI, and I wanted to make sure I keep it simple. In the bottom left, there's Zero's health and energy. I kind of like having 1 meter be vertical and 1 horizontal, but this is just a placeholder and it's subject to change. I'm still kind of leaning towards making both vertical like the original games, but for now, this is what it is. Over on the bottom right shows Zero's weapons. Using the scroll wheel on the mouse or the up and down D-pad buttons will bring up a sub weapon list so you can choose which one you want. Pressing the saber attack button while this menu is open will select the sub weapon that you have highlighted, and pressing the sub weapon attack button will simply close the menu. And that wraps up this phase of the project. There are still a couple of things that need to be tweaked and added before Zero's done, but I think it's going well. In the next phase, I'll be giving Zero his other 2 sub weapons, so the Z-Knuckle and the Chain Rod, and begin working on enemy AI. Hopefully also get the first boss fight done. Yes, I said first boss fight, meaning the scope of the project has been extended just a little bit. It's still more so going to be a vertical slice more than anything else, but we'll talk more about that in the next devlog. Hopefully it won't take as long as it did this time around to get some progress made. As always, the current build is available on Patreon, link below. And a big thank you to my patrons. You all are the real MVPs. Also, another thank you to this video sponsor, Milanote, link also below. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And if you're feeling super generous, how about subscribing? We are almost at 20K. So I really want to say thank you all for getting the channel to this point. But I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.